really be used so that only the last mile charges, the consumer gets a cheaper service, because that is ultimately the universal service objective also. So whether it will be really given at a subsidized rate to those operators who want to use this entire ecosystem to say provide last mile broadband services, or maybe enterprise services, or whatever innovations are required, where an innovation ecosystem can also be built up in the district. Because for internet service providers, you have got a district-based licensing also, so you can have a local ecosystem which can be developed for local commerce, district-based commerce, and all those things can come up. So what is the thought process of government on this? And what is really, whether BBNL, if it becomes a independent profit center kind of a situation, then this thing may not happen.
Thank you. One last comment, and then we'll have 15 minutes left for the panelists to respond. And
hello, I'm Dwarika Singh. Basically, I'm working from last 23 years in the rural India, basically, and especially in the digital ICT space. Basically, what I'm saying, like I will share experience of agriculture digitization activity of Madhya Pradesh. Even BSNL claiming that we have reached till block level and something like that. But even a small application that takes, you can say, 8 kbps of data transfer, we were not able to enable that in roughly around 123 blocks. That was, and even after taking 2 years, I will enable, till date, I can say it is not working. One thing, that is another part. And some gentleman had told that the CSR, they have invested so much of CSR, but they have never seen where that CSR has gone. That is very important. When we are talking about the enabling the rural public, so our content, sustained content, and you can say the enabled content, you can say, that is needed for the rural public. Like if you are using the ICT, so whether that ICT is the sector specific, like if you are talking about the healthcare or talking about the agriculture, and that is made in accordance to the rural public, that is getting enabled or not. Another thing like innovation that Mr. Balaji has told, that innovation. We have never integrated like college students or college public for the innovation. They should be enabled from the beginning. We should throw the problems and we should ask the solution and innovation from them. And it needs the encouragement, that kind of activity at the silos we are doing, but it needs a systematic approach to make a successful of the digital India. Like in e-governance also, if you'll see the investment and the success, that's the major drawback when we are making the policy and when we are executing. Both are totally dealing. We are making policy at one place and we are executing at another place. And what is happening in the execution, we are not target based. So these needs to be like multi-stake assessment and all everything, but it needs a policy level thing should be in a project mode, and it should be monitored and accountable things that needs to be done.
thank you very much. I think fantastic comments from all the distinguished delegates. Maybe I'll just request some of the panelists to take on before I request Madam to just maybe give some closing comments or a couple of questions that were addressed directly to you. Maybe you'd like to respond to that.
So a couple of reflections. I don't know if they are point answers to the questions, but I think the first one is, I said before that the task is mammoth. If we want to go out and bring in 600 million broadband lines out, I think we need to rely on multiple technologies. And one of the technologies that I feel is not talked about at all is the cable technology. And I think if you've seen the first 2 phases of the cable, there were about 40 million homes that were digitized. I think we are bringing in technology which, on a cable that's coming to your home for TV viewing, you can have a broadband line up to 30 megabytes per second. And cost of producing that broadband line is 1/3. So I think in these high-level discussions, while we are building, while we are really discussing the spectrum and lack of spectrum, is probably an alternative way to go out and cover. It will not cover all the gap. It still will have to be 80% mobile. But here it's in another piece of technology that is already out there. I think TV happens to be in many rural places. Now you can energize that with an internet access. I think that's one piece. The second, which Manoj alluded before, was combining licensed and unlicensed. I think Wi-Fi, I mean, if you take a global look at it, has been a phenomenal tool. From a business standpoint, it hasn't really created enormous dividends for operators. But I think for India, it's relevant. It's relevant because Wi-Fi not only gives you a technology where you don't need a spectrum, it also can act as an offload for operators. And of course, technology innovation has to happen, which will enable a user to seamlessly move between 3GPP and the unlicensed. And I think those technologies are now coming. So I think that's another piece could answer some of these questions. And the third, which I think some of you brought up, is the CSR fund. I think, to be honest, I think companies are doing, but it's too little. I think India is a massive geography, and the task is huge. And I think what we need, rather than go announce a fund of, we did for this financial year, we say $40 million. We embrace all innovative guys out there in rural India. They can come with cool ideas that are relevant for them, but it's too little. But what we could do is go out, and I think I touch upon digital literacy is not only about giving people, basic education so they can access internet. It's about going there and tapping the talent and provide them possibilities to innovate. I think, whatever said and done, I think mobile operators have done a phenomenal job bringing internet to the places where 10 years back we couldn't dream of. So now how do you tap onto that resource? There are kids out there, I happen to be in Africa for a few years. The moment you give access to the kids, 10, 15-year-old, I don't think you need to train them. Give them internet access, give them computer, they'll figure out a way. So I think that is what is needed. Someone in this ecosystem going out, attacking that piece of the problem.
Thank you. Manoj?
I don't know, it may sound a bit philosophical reflection, but when we launched in 1994, the first complaints that came to our hotlines, and I used to work with an operator in those days, was saying that ye chalta nahi hai. This is not working. Why? Because there is no dial tone. So there was a paradigm shift, right? And from there, till the time that I just got my WhatsApp message from my mother, who's 79 years old, in Marathi, it's written in Marathi. It is a sea change, and it's not, it is I'm so happy and proud to be part of this whole revolution. And I'm even more happier for the youth that is sitting here. I have a daughter, she's 15 years old, and she wants to do all adult kind of things. She wants to drive my car. She wants to see a movie which she's not permitted to see, and all those kind of things. And I've been telling her, let's reverse our roles. I'll become the son or daughter and you become the father. Because I want to live the next 20 years to see India at 2034 being the largest economy, having the largest economy of middle-class people in the whole world. And this is an OECD reference. I'm not quoting it without any data point. By 2050, the whole prognosis is that our economy size will be in the range of $70 to $80 trillion, potentially the largest economy of the world. So I think we all sit here with this natural resource, with the democratic resource, with the dividend that we all have. And it is potentially up to us with all the right technological interventions, policy frameworks to just make it happen. So I feel extremely lucky to be in this part of the world, this time of day, and for the next 20 years. And how I wish I was my daughter's age. Yeah, just a reflection.
Just responding, if you will, to the professor. Yes, you're right in terms of saying that the term cells don't have their own measurement equipment for EMF, but that's really not the issue. Yes, of course, they use equipment by the operators, but let me ask you this: whether your father or your mother or your child uses a thermometer, whether it's used in the hospital or whether it's used at home, does it make a difference? Of course not. Whether an ECG equipment is used in the hospital or whether it's used by a private doctor or somebody else, right? It's not the question, right? All of the equipment that is used by whether by private operators or otherwise are all TEC certified. They're subject to standards. They are calibrated. They're a combination of hardware and software. You have to have trained people who use it, not anybody who does it. And when the TEC takes the equipment, they take it under their control. All right, they calibrate, they test the software to make sure that it is reading appropriately. And they are very sophisticated people in the TEC. These are not folks, they come from the ITC area and they are trained in the ITR wing. It's a very, very strict selection process. So I wouldn't downplay the caliber of the talent we have in term cells and the equipment. There's probably about 5 vendors that provide this. It's not as if you just pull it off the shelf. As you rightly point out, expensive. So just because they use equipment from the operators, that is standardized equipment, doesn't really make a difference.
I'd request the chairperson to, maybe make some concluding remarks and respond to a couple of queries there.
First, I will respond to certain specific questions that were raised regarding NOFN, and then maybe a comment or two in summation. So as to NOFN, I think there were 2 issues that were flagged. One was a question as to what will be the business model once this infrastructure is built out. What is it that industry can expect? And there, I think in answering that, I hope I will also address the point that you made. It's not going to be free in the sense that while government is utilizing the accruals that have been brought in by the telecom service providers into the USOF, the idea is that once the infrastructure is built, it will be given at nominal cost. So it will not be free, but at the same time, it will not be at a cost which makes it uncompetitive for industry. It will be at a highly nominal cost. It's probably premature in the day to actually put out numbers or attempt to put out numbers, but that's the principle that will underlie the tariff. Okay, that's one. The second, I completely take on board the observation made by the professor from IIM. And the other question that was raised about, the other issue the point that was made about government spending 72,000 crores, I just want to make a small correction here. The current approved project is around 25,000 crores. The new design, the new architecture is what is expected
As per the finance minister's budget, it's been approved to 72,000 crores over the next 3 years. It's documented.
Yeah, but
and 40,000 crores for the current plan. It's documented.
Well, I don't want to sort of say too much on that because, as I said, the project is up for a re-architecting, and enhancement. So we'll have to see. Now, a couple of comments in summation. And what struck me in all these discussions was that, clearly how we build out the broadband is going to be absolutely vital to everyone in India, old, young, rural, urban, whether he's a decision maker, a politician, a person involved with governance, business, everyone is going to be, hugely impacted. So we need a broadband revolution, similar to what sparked off the mobile telecom revolution. We need to ensure that we have a broadband revolution within the coming 5 to 7 years. What are the critical enablers for that? I think this is Digital India offers us a huge opportunity to do that. But at the same time, what I do realize, and this came out, so I'm not going to respond to specific issues that came up, because there's a much larger issue at stake here. And that is that, this is a field where we have to build infrastructure. The task is momentous, huge investments required. Multiple stakeholders have to be aligned. Business models have to come together. Technology has to come together. A whole lot of things have to come together. Now, the issue is we cannot afford to have competitive regulation in this area. What we need to have is competitive promotion. And that's where I want to draw a parallel or a comparison with the IT sector. When we started off in the late 1990s, early 2000, and the big IT revolution was still about to happen, what we saw was that there has been from then on competitive promotion of the IT sector. Every state government has wanted to get on board. Every local body has wanted to get on board. Sometimes, in fact, it has seemed a little anomalous, where even small local bodies would say, we want a cyber park, and they would benchmark themselves with the best cyber park in God knows where. But the point is that what it meant was that every stakeholder was aligned for promoting this industry. That is what we need to do, because telecom infrastructure is even more fundamental than IT. IT can only ride on the fundamental infrastructure that is created. So if we recognize that, then how do we ensure that every stakeholder is aligned here? And I have 2 points to make. First of all, I think we need to create a hugely positive narrative on the kind of development enabler that this infrastructure is. I've seen absolutely mind-boggling, fabulous ads on what telecom can do for me as a consumer. But if I were to compare that with the kind of, let's say, the advertising campaign that E. Chaupal ran, nobody looked at ITC and nobody looked at that side. Here was E. Chaupal. Such a hugely positive narrative. Here's this industry which is India's biggest development enabler. And yet, what is the narrative? The narrative is, let me look at it for revenue. Let me look at it for cyber security. Let me look at it for regulation. That's not the narrative we want. Industry really needs to think and see how we can start creating, changing the scenario from one of competitive regulation to competitive promotion. And the positive narrative is absolutely key. The second thing is we need convergence of the industry. We need to hear industry speak in one voice. I don't think we can afford to get balkanized right now between the OTT and between the telecom operators. No, because OTT cannot survive without the telecom operators. And the telecom operators need the others for driving their business models. Surely we're capable enough to get together and find out how both can get a share of a much larger pie. And I think both definitely need to work together on this. And not just, it's not just between, let's say, the platform providers or the IT guys and the telecom providers. Again, in telecom infrastructure, as Sanjay was pointing out, what about cable? I mean, we all need to see how we can get broadband out there. So industry needs to get together, and industry needs to get together with government. Again, we never saw that in the IT industry. We saw that the IT industry and government largely spoke in one voice. But here we are, intensely competing between ourselves, which is fine. You can do it in the marketplace. But in terms of policy, we need to learn to converge. So on these 2 short points, let's work towards creating a scenario where every one of the stakeholders actually works together to promote this basic infrastructure. Because as Digital India says, this is utility. This is the most basic utility that we're going to be needing in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's my duty on behalf of FICCI and DOT, the organizers, to thank all our panelists. Thank you all for making this a very lively discussion and debate, and most of all to Madam Sundarajan for chairing this session. Thank you very much. Tea is served. I don't know when the next session starts. You might want to make some announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Balaji, and I'm very thankful for all the esteemed panel for sharing their views with us. For the delegates, we would now be breaking off for a tea and coffee break, which would last till 12. We are running by the schedule, so we'll start next session in the same room at 12 o'clock. There is also an announcement, as we have already told, that we would be distributing 3 iPad minis during the day, not at one point of the time. So there is a bowl kept outside. Please drop your visiting cards there. The lucky draw would be done during the day at various points. So, and those who don't have their cards, please, they can contact the registration counter. 2 important rules. We will not entertain 2 multiple entries from a same person. If that is found, the person's name would be removed. And secondly, when the name is announced, the person has to be in the room to take the gift. We'll not give it to the nominee. Thank you.